Welcome to the No More Drafts podcast. I'm Louise Corinwe, and this is the podcast for people who are tired of slow progress, tired of overthinking things and waiting to feel ready before taking action. Each week, we unpack the fears, the patterns, and stories that keep you stuck in ways you may not even realize, so that you can take your next step forward, your next courageous action, and move towards doing your life's work and building a life that's bigger than fear. Together, we move you out of perpetual draft mode and into done mode. So, what are we talking about today? Today, we're talking about mindset and perspective shifts to help you become the kind of person who executes consistently on their goals, their dreams, and their plans. Because there's a hard pill that you, who might be an ideas person, a visionary, has to swallow. And that hard pill is that it doesn't so much matter what ideas you have. It matters what you execute. And this can be hard to accept because as idealists, people who love coming up with ideas and seeing things before they happen, and you might be somewhat of a visionary as well, we can become wedded to them. We can become attached to the dreams, the ideas, and sometimes it can feel safer. It can feel safer to just dream and ideate because then we don't have to take the risk of the possibility of failure, of the possibility of rejection. We don't have to deal with the disappointment and the sadness of the dream not going how we thought it would. So keeping it in its dream idea state protects us. It's safer there. Trying to now bring that dream and idea to life is scary because that's where the failure lives. That's where the disappointment is. That's where the how will people receive me is, or the judgment from others. But the longer we stay in that mode of cradling our dreams and our ideas like a baby and feeding the baby and nurturing it, stroking its head, the more attached we become to it in that state and the more scary it becomes to help it grow up and become an adult and mature. And there are just a few perspective shifts that help with this. And as you know, perfectionism is a huge part of this. And I talk about it so much. Wanting the journey towards maturing our dreams and our goals to be perfect gets in the way. Wanting the end state to look perfect gets in the way. So a huge perspective shift, that was my knees cracking. A huge perspective shift is letting go of that idea of perfectionism. And the second one is accepting that the idea and dream state is not enough. If we want to keep taking care of our goals and dreams in the baby state, fine. But if we want to see them flourish, if we want to see them grow, if we want to bring them to life, we've got to switch. We've got to switch and to a degree let go. Just like how a parent does with a child, right? At some point, you take care of that child because it's dependent on you and you nurture it until it's able to fly the nest and live its own life and do its own thing. And I'm sure a lot of parents will say, not all my kids turned out exactly how I thought they would. And there were bumps in the road and it was challenging. But they feel they've done a good job when their child is able to live and stand independently and has grown into full form and maturity. And to a degree, we need to have that attitude towards some of our dreams and our goals because some of it is not for us. Some of it is for other people to benefit from. So to a degree, we're duty bound to mature them and to grow them up out of just idea and goal setting state. Ideas feel exciting. They do, but they don't change your life until they are actually lived out, until they are nurtured, developed, and matured. Now, some of you may be able to pay someone to execute your goals and your dreams for you, which is absolutely amazing. But if you're not in that position, you ultimately need to become someone that can hold both vision and the more granular day-to-day details at the same time. Of course, you need to be able to see the bigger picture, why you're doing this, the dream, the idea, and the vision. But then you also at the same time need to be able to see, well, what do I need to do today to get there? What are the practical steps I've got to do even now to get there? And that's the second perspective shift, being able to drill down into that specific detail, to be able to think big picture, wonderful, great. But then you also need to be able to translate that into, okay, what do I need to do now? And there's a couple of questions I ask my clients that help them do this. And one of them is great, share the dream, share the idea, share the vision. But what is the immediate next step? And that step needs to be something that you can do in no more than an hour. It needs to be something you can practically go and execute now if you needed to, and you would finish it within an hour. And if you find that you can't do it now, find the next step that you can do now. You may not be able to, but it needs to be something that you can do right now. Then it's a question my husband will ask me too, and it's so helpful and simple, but it really is just, can you do it sooner? Can you do it sooner? Because oftentimes we might say, oh, in 2 weeks' time, I need to go and ask this person this question. And when we ask, well, can you do it sooner? It helps us redesign that task or that activity that we have in our head into something that is more achievable now. So perhaps, for instance, one of the things that you think is your immediate next step is to make a list of all the possible suppliers, and you think you need 50 possible suppliers for whatever product, say, you're trying to develop. Well, if you are asked, can you do it sooner? You now have to think of another way to get that outcome differently, because now you've got to do it quicker. So perhaps that list goes from 50 suppliers to 10, or perhaps actually you just for now need 3. So whereas before you're thinking, oh, I need 2 weeks to find this list of 50 potential suppliers from all over the world, thinking about, can I do it sooner, helps you rethink what you actually even need to do and how much you need to get done as well. So what's your immediate next step? And can you do it sooner? And how can that reshape, redesign, and redefine what that next step actually is? And then a third one is just, can you do it now? Can you do it now? And if you can't, you've got to rethink what that next step is. Just like, can you do it sooner? Can you do it now? And if you can't do it now, potentially there's still more editing of that task to do. You can yet still break it down into a even smaller chunk. And that is the purpose of these questions and this perspective shift. It is to be that person who can both hold the bigger picture, the vision, the idea, the dream, and yet also execute on the finite, specific tasks and details. Because it's those consistent acts of execution that will add up to you being able to see your dream realized and bring your idea to life. But so many of us are trying to execute at the level of the dream, the idea, and the goal, or we're still trying to execute when we're in idea and vision state. And I talk about this in a video I recently released on my Louise Corinne YouTube channel. I'll leave the link to that below in the show notes for you to see. But this leads to another perspective or mindset shift that's important, which is that learning and growing in your capability is not just about head knowledge or theory. It's about application and execution, making progress, getting things done helps you do that. It helps you apply, and application helps you learn. And I mentioned this in the last podcast episode about how there are skills waiting for you on the other side of your execution and your progress that you can only develop through the doing. And as people who have perfectionist tendencies, who procrastinate, you want certainty. You want to feel that you have everything you need before you start. But the reality of it is that you're missing out on the learning and the growth that can happen through you just doing. And there are things you just will never be able to develop, learn, and grow in until you begin. Another one is execution can be fun. And in fact, it's critical. It's important to make getting things done and making progress with your goals fun. And how are you doing that? Again, people with perfectionist tendencies and procrastinators tend to think that success, growth, and progress has to mean suffering. You have to suffer, okay? If you've not gone through the worst of the worst, you don't deserve it. You've not earned your stripes. And, maybe in some settings that's the case, but there's no point striving for suffering's sake. You can implement fun and play into your execution, into actually moving things forward. And there's more likelihood that you will succeed, that you will be consistent and stay consistent. Maybe for a short period of time, people can put themselves through intense suffering in order to take action. But how sustainable is it? So what makes your execution fun for you? Is it the location that you work in and that you make progress in? Is it having some incentives? Are there things you enjoy that you can give yourself once you have dedicated time to making progress, for instance? Or perhaps you enjoy doing it with people in a team. Maybe that's what makes it fun for you. Something small I do, for instance, is I put on some of my favorite playlists on Spotify. I put on some music. That's one of the things that for me makes execution and making progress fun. My environment matters as well. Sometimes doing it with other people, co-working side by side, that can be fun too. I do have a habit of giving myself a little food related treat and having my favorite drink with me as well. Having a drink I like, nothing fancy, just something I make at home. Just having a nice, warm, hot drink. It doesn't need to be the same thing for every person. This is very, very personal. So think about what could make you executing more fun and challenge this perspective that you have to suffer. Because that can also, like I said, put people off even trying and going for it because it's going to be boring or it's not as fun as generating ideas or it will be stressful and tiring. Well, put in guardrails to make sure that it doesn't become destructive for you and intentionally add mechanisms and strategies to keep it fun. It can be fun. Not every second will be, but it doesn't have to be approached with trepidation and avoidance and fear. So how can you make the execution, the action part of your dreams, goals, and vision a bit more fun? How can you add a little bit of spice to it, a little bit of enjoyment? What can be done for that? The last perspective shift for today, there's a few, but the last one for today is that execution is definitely a skill to build. It is a habit. And you may not be prone to it, yes, because perfectionistic beliefs and tendencies have gotten in the way, like procrastination, fear of failure, and self-doubt. But it may also be because you've just not cultivated it and practiced it yet enough. You know, I alluded to this at the start. The more you stay in the comfort of the idea stage, the more that just becomes what you're used to. And you don't have the habit of being someone that takes action immediately or moves forward. It just hasn't become your way of being. So there's good news here because, as we all know, we can make new habits. We can form new ways of doing things and new behaviors. But of course, it requires commitment, belief, and consistency in doing it. So when you start to see execution as a way of being, as a habit, as a skill, you can now start to commit to mastering it. And again, that doesn't happen overnight. That is something that you do over time. But I'm launching something called the DMC, the Done Mode Collective. And part of the reason I'm launching it is for this very thing. It is to help people with the accountability arm of executing and getting things done, making progress, and also the social support that is so important and necessary. And I mentioned earlier the whole having fun piece. For some people, they enjoy having people there as they execute. Of course, we're all focused and we're all doing what we need to do, but having other people there can be fun too. So if you're interested and you like the sound of the DMC, please just subscribe to my newsletter. I'll be sharing information about it in due course. Your growth is waiting for you on the other side of execution, on the journey of execution. There is so much waiting for you there. And I just want to encourage you with this, which is the world needs what you have to offer. But until you execute, until you do and take action, the world won't receive it. So consider that making progress is directly correlated with you making that unique contribution. I mean, just think about your favorite music or your favorite film or theater show. It could be a piece of art or a book. That was once a concept in someone's mind. That was once an idea. Just imagine if they never made those steps to execute it. I would love to know your reflections from this episode today. This is my second podcast episode. I'm so grateful that you're listening and that you're here with me. So if you have any comments, any questions, episode ideas, things you'd love for me to cover, you can contact me directly at nomoredrafts@gmail.com. But until then, I will see you in done mode. The No More Drafts podcast is about movement, not perfection. So before you go, what can you move out of draft mode this week and into imperfectly done. Even if it's a mess, and even if you don't feel ready yet. And if you want more support, come and join me on YouTube, where you'll find me as Louise Corinwe, and also follow the No More Drafts podcast, which is on YouTube as well. And if you want live community support and accountability with group coaching from me, join the Done Mode Collective by signing up to my newsletter. And most importantly, if this episode helped you in any way, don't overthink it. Just share it with someone whose potential is way too big to stay stuck in their head.